We will begin with Gaurav Rastogi. Mr. Rastogi is a practicing Hindu, writing and talking about the Hindu scriptures, such as the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and Vedanta philosophy. He brings Hinduism's most beloved and ancient wisdom into practical language that can be applied by anyone interested in living deeply. He is an engineer from the prestigious Delhi University and the founder of an artificial intelligence startup, and also the founder of Mantra Chakra Foundation. He also studies Christian, Sufi, and Sikh traditions. Let's welcome Gaurav Rastogi.
Hinduism's beliefs about the afterlives, that's my topic. It's not a topic I usually talk about. Most of my topics are about living deeply. And all of that is informed by the thoughts that went into today's talk. I was immersed into this topic when I least expected it. The day was January 15th, 2010. And that morning, I already knew it would be a special day. It was the day of the longest solar eclipse in the millennium, and the longest till the year 3043. And I was in South India on a business trip at the time, and as fate would have it, the full eclipse was going to be visible straight up in the clear blue sky above where I was. A show of a lifetime. A few hundred miles north, my father, not yet 70, walked to the doctor's office and sat down for his turn. Now, this day is also special because it marks the northward ascent of the rising sun for the half of the year. So the sun rises now, starting the sunrise starts moving north from this point on in the year for 6 months, and then it starts coming back south. And this is the day that marks the northward ascent of the rising sun for this half of the year. A great day to fly kites in India. Also a great day to die. Within minutes of sitting down at the doctor's office, my father looked up at the TV screen that was there, looked up, his eyes rolled up, he breathed in, he breathed out a few times, said Om, and then he was gone. The doctors could do nothing. And I rushed home, it took me 9 hours, and driving through the longest eclipse of my life. And all night, I cried by my father's inert body. The next morning, I shaved my head. That's a part of the rituals. And we washed, bathed, and cremated my father's body by the river. And then we returned the next day to collect his ashes. And 1 week later, my brother and I dispersed the ashes into the holiest river. And those 5 dips into the cold, frigid waters of Mother Ganga were not the only immersion I went through. Over the next few weeks, I was introduced to the rituals and customs of a tradition I had left behind decades ago, to the story of the space between deaths and what it means to truly live. What I set fire to that day was my father's body, but my father was not just the body. He had breathed his last. He was not merely his breath. His thoughts, his ideas live in me, but he was not merely his thoughts and his ideas and his intellect. There was something more to my father. And over the next few months, years, I dove deeply into the subject to find out, with a ferocity I hadn't experienced before, what does it mean to die? And therefore, what does it mean to live? And so I went into this journey and I wrote a series of short essays. I read our scripture, and I tried to go deep into meditation practices to understand fully for myself what it means to die. And through that experience of personal death, to also understand what it means to live. What is the true meaning of life? And so began my journey in earnest. Part of the stories that I did, part of the catharsis of returning back, I wrote a few stories to understand for myself what it means to live. And the example I came to all the time for the Hindu system, the Hindu set of beliefs, is the monarch butterfly. California monarch butterfly, around exactly this time of the year, either the year in February, down by Fremont and Ardenwood Farm, the butterflies come out. They they uh, they feast deeply on the milkweed that grows over there, and then they take flight. And that those set of butterflies then move over to somewhere in the Sierra Nevadas, where after a short life of 1 month, they breed, they give birth to little they lay eggs, and then they die. Another set of butterflies, the children of these monarchs, are born, and they travel up north. They travel up north to Oregon, Washington area, and then they breed in turn and die within a month. And they stay there for 2 generations, living for a month each, until the next generation of butterflies are born again. And they begin their epic journey down south to California, where we meet them again in February. It's a cycle that's repeated for hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of years. And it's a cycle that's remembered across generations. You could argue it's the same butterfly. You could argue it's different butterflies. It's the same butterfly in different butterfly bodies. And this transmigration of souls across the jump of memory of one body, of being born, growing up and eating and feeding and dying, jumping from that set of memories to another set of memories, but still continuing the journey regardless. That repeating journey of reincarnation, that's the story of Hindu beliefs. That's what we believe, that's what we've been told, and that's what we understand from our scripture, which is we come and go, and we come and go again, much like Groundhog Day in many ways. The same thing repeats until you learn the lessons, and when you've learned the lessons, you're free to go. And it's somewhat like that. So this body is not to be grieved for. This body is not our true selves. Our true selves is independent of this self. And I will quote from the Bhagavad Gita, which I'm carrying, but I will see if I will find it quicker here. This self is timeless. And I'm quoting from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm reading Georg Feuerstein's translation. It's over here. This is chapter 2, verse 12. Verily, never was I not, were you not, or were they these rulers not, nor will any of us not be henceforth. Just as in this body the body essence experiences childhood, youth, and old age, so too it obtains another body after death. A thoughtful man is not confused by this. What he's saying is the self experiences this world, this material world, through this body. And then, when it's time, goes away. One is not confused by this coming and going. Just as we recognize fully that it was me that was this tiny little baby, all bald and cute, and then it was me, young and handsome, all with a head full of hair, and it is me again, just older and bald. It is still me. And this recognition that I exist, I persist even though my body changes form, my outward form changes structure. So too, from body to body, there is this recognition that the self continues, persists across bodies. So there's no identification with this self that needs to happen, this physical body, this material body. And that continuation of the journey will go on. And that understanding provides us the framework to think about. Now, the other example that's used within our scripture is I'm wearing this t-shirt and this sweater today. When I go to work, I wear a jacket and I wear formal trousers. And when I teach yoga, I'm wearing yoga pants. I wear clothes, I change clothes, and when my clothes get old, I get rid of them, I get new clothes, and I wear those clothes. This body is like a cloth that we put on. We put it on temporarily, fully understanding that when it's time, we will get rid of it, and a new set of clothes will come, and those will be the body, the shape, the form that we take until it's time for the next one. So this attachment with this physical body is the source of suffering, as I'm sure my friends from the Buddhist system would have told you as well, which is this attachment to the self is the source of suffering. And as soon as the attachment is not just merely to this self, but to God Himself, then there is no suffering, and there is no coming and going at that time. So this body is a colorful cloth, but the soul is even more luminous. You learn to love your clothes, but you are ready to discard them when they get old. Just like that, learn to love this physical body, but be ready to discard it and take on another one. The endless cycle of living and dying will continue. The soul has to take a journey over many lifetimes to reach its end state. And that's the lesson that I took away from the monarch butterflies. Bhagavad Gita, later in the same chapter, says, "For the soul, there is never birth nor death, nor, having once been, does he ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain." As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such change. I'm repeating what I said earlier. This transmigration of the spirit soul is well understood. We are not this physical body. But this physical body, we have the opportunity to act. We have the opportunity to, this capacity to act, we call karma. Karma is not the way that's understood in modern language. It's not a female dog that's out to get you. Karma is what you do and who you do it for. Every action has its reaction. It's true in science. It's true in this universe itself. And the universe is not out to get you. The universe is a endlessly reflective universe. It just plays back what you do and who you do it for. And so, karma, if your action is for the small s self, this endlessly reflective universe pays in kind. Sort of like an email chain that if you forward the email, you shall receive a reply that begs a response, and so on. You go back and forth, back and forth. That's karma. This chain of karma goes on. Situations come as they do, but we can act true to our true nature. Or whatever. We can also choose to act habitually for this narrow nominal self. This name, whatever bank balance I have, whatever name, family, vehicle, possessions that I have. I could act for the narrow nominal self, this bag of skin and bones, in which case we shall add to the debt of accumulated karma. Allegedly, Viktor Frankl said, the internet is divided on that, but he probably didn't say exactly the same things. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom, end quote. That's not far from the Hindu view. Karma carries over lifetimes, and this debt, it is what we seek to pay and incur no more. Some debts are carried over from lifetimes, and some debts are due today, while others we incur through mindless action for our narrow selves, adding to the mountain we came in with. So the karma continues, and we call this samsara, the cycle of coming and going and incurring debt and paying it off and incurring some more and paying it off. This transmigration of soul is not very different from the sequels we get from Hollywood, as we talked about. Lessons will repeat until the learning is demonstrated. But it gets better as you learn to act selflessly. Or gets worse if you don't pay attention. And so the wages of sin is not death, as in some traditions, but rebirth. Just lower in the evolutionary scale, descending into lower forms. A crocodile, a crow, or a cockroach even, or ascending into the final exit, that which we call moksha or nirvana. This human birth is special because only in this body form can one see the material and rise into the spiritual. But to rise in the spirit requires eyes that need to be cultivated and hands that need to act in harmony. But we already covered that in karma. So moksha is mukti or freedom. And it's freedom from this material world of suffering and impermanence. The words used in Sanskrit are dukkhalayam ashashvatam. Dukkhalayam is this house of suffering and misery, this world, this material world. Ashashvatam, which is impermanent, because it is bound by the rules of time. That which is born must die. That which has started must end. The rules of time persist in this world because it is impermanent. And we seek to get out of this world filled with misery and impermanence. And we seek to go to a more permanent, not more permanent, fully permanent state. And that state is also described in the Bhagavad Gita. And this came home to me. The reason I told you the story about my father is the Gita describes two passages, two ways to go. There's the northern passage and the southern passage. It's also called the way of the light and the way of the smoke. Not very different from at my father's funeral pyre. There's the fire itself, the fire and the light. And then there's the smoke also rising up to the heavens, both rising up. But one path leads to a return and one path does not return back. And so there are times, there's a lot of detailed description about how you can go and come back. I will skip those because we don't have time. But what's described is unambiguous. That this cycle of impermanence continues until we are able to get out of it by surrendering completely all our actions and all our motives, all our breath, all our energy to the Supreme, which allows us to then, even in this world, experience a little of the permanence, a little of the blissful state that is permanently available to us. And even in this world, as we live, we can live as we will after we die, after maybe one birth, many or millions of births later. One does not know. So with that, the call from the Bhagavad Gita and the Hindu tradition is that of moksha or freedom. Freedom, of course, from the material world, freedom from suffering and impermanence, freedom also from the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. Those are the four things described to describe this existence, which is just a cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. Freedom, like the butterfly that soars on the sunshine, never to return again. Forever in God's love and out of time, as I am right now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Gorakh. What a powerful sharing that was. Goodness. It's the stories of life that create that sense of power and reality about how we are living, how we are thinking.